This woman right here is Akasha, the Queen of the Damned, the first ever vampire, and what's surprising is she actually rivals Lestat for the most heavily searched character on YouTube from the entire Vampire Chronicles collection. Look, I'm a one-man show here on vampire folklore. I do all the research, the scripting, the editing, the voiceover, I do it all, and if you're like me, someone who believes in good old-fashioned deep diving research, the nitty-gritty details, then look, why not stick with me, because today I want to talk about the Vampire Chronicles and in particular why Akasha chose Lestat as her new king, the new king of the damned, why she chose him over Marius after the latter devoted so much of his life to her well-being and protection, and why she killed her previous king too, Enkill. But let's look at Marius. Marius for me is one of the coolest characters from the entire Chronicles series. He's like the go-to guy who has an answer for everything, and rightly so. He's over 2,000 years old, truly does have a wealth of knowledge for the ages, and is one of the most powerful vampires in existence. Yet when Akasha rose from her somewhat vampire hibernation, it was Lestat that woke her. Lestat who gave her the motivation to finally get up from her throne and become active again. Furthermore, she then chose Lestat as her mate, with whom she'd build a new empire. Something I just want to highlight here is my issue with how Akasha is portrayed in the movie The Queen of the Damned, the worst, most ill thought out piece of trash movie and a downright insult to Anne and her work. Don't get me wrong here guys, I've no issue with Aaliyah's acting. She was actually fantastic, probably the only good thing about the movie. But my problem is that Akasha was portrayed as the villain of the story the entire time, when in actual fact, she wasn't. She wasn't a hero either, but she allowed herself to turn into her marble-like state for a reason. Some of you may not be aware that at one point, Akasha was also captured and fed on by humans who sought immortality for themselves. She didn't have what I'd call a decent existence. Yes, I know she became corrupt with power and did some pretty awful things, but it still does not make her a villain. The vampires that came directly from her line did at one point believe that if she did return one day, that she would lead them. Even Marius thought so too. Marius did really worship Akasha and Enkill, but more so Akasha as she held a sacred core. When Marius learned that he, like other vampires, is vitally connected to Akasha, and if she or even Enkill suffered harm, that Marius and all other vampires would experience similar damage, it angered him. Why must his existence be tethered to another? Knowing their lives were in danger despite their power, Akasha asks Marius to take both her and Enkill with him when he returns home. And he does. He places them safely in the depths of his home. He cares for them, and at several points Akasha even allows him to drink from her wrist. She also doesn't remain a statue for the entire time either. She rose temporarily over the years when it was necessary. Case in point, when the Greek vampire Eudoxia visited Marius and was murdered by the Great Mother. Firstly, at Akasha's wishes before Marius intervened, then he willingly fed her to the Queen after the latter betrayed Marius by choosing high-profile victims in the area to kill, which in turn drew too much attention. As I said, Marius really worshipped Akasha. He wanted nothing more than to truly bring her back to life, back to a life of existence. He wanted her to awaken by his hand, by his influence, and after all, he really did dedicate a lot of his life to her and her husband. He was more disappointed than anyone when he learned of Akasha's plans to almost eradicate men out of existence, but before we get to that, let's talk about the other vampire in this story, someone you might be familiar with, Lestat de Liancourt. Now, Marius and Lestat have quite a unique relationship, and just for those of you who have not read the book and only seen the Queen of the Damned movie, Marius did not turn Lestat into a vampire. That's a complete fabrication for the movie in order to tie two books together while squeezing Lestat's beginnings into a 2-minute scene. Lestat's creator was a vampire known as Magnus. Check it out, it's in the book. Lestat and Marius originally connect telepathically. That's how they meet. Lestat is enduring a vampire slumber of his own before Marius comes and revives him. He takes the young vampire to his private island and is very intrigued with Lestat. He begins unraveling what he represents as a person. It's not long before Lestat displays how open he is to the world, how open he is to change and embrace anything that interests him, even with consequence. Marius then takes Lestat down to the chamber of those who must be kept, Enkill and Akasha, and explains their importance to the survival of the vampire race. When Lestat gets the opportunity to venture to entertain the queen, he's allowed to drink from her willingly and passionately, while she drinks from him in return. He absorbs her energy, strength, and most notably, her power. Akasha's blood was like no other, and Lestat had jumped way ahead of the pecking order in terms of becoming one of the most powerful vampires. Enkill, sensing this connection, arises from his throne and is moments away from killing Lestat until Marius intervenes. Furious with Lestat, Marius insists that he leave the island until Enkill returns to his rest state, and reluctantly, Lestat leaves. So let's just analyze what happened there for a moment. Akasha and Lestat drank from each other. She was intrigued by the music he played for her. It ignited something inside her which she had not felt for a very long time. It's also clear that her emotions, feelings, and overall attitude towards Enkill was now basically non-existent. He was pretty much irrelevant to her. She craved something new, and Lestat was that something new. By drinking each other's blood, they were now connected. Akasha would always know where Lestat was, and as for Lestat, he enjoyed the fruits of her power after consuming her blood. Marius had drank Akasha's blood too, but only when he was injured and needed to do so. He couldn't believe that, after so many years of caring for her, that she actually drank from Lestat in return. He knew that Lestat was different from any other vampire. He knew that Lestat did not wish to hide who he was, and this is what caught Akasha's attention. However, once Lestat was sent away, Akasha returns to rest once more, so obviously, her first encounter with Lestat wasn't enough for her to permanently rise. Marius was also quite jealous of anyone else having a relationship with Akasha in the manner of which he did. She was truly his queen. Even with Pandora, the two created shrines in the chamber, whereas Lestat had no interest in such an existence, and that's why I believe Akasha was lured to him. Lestat finally brought Akasha back with his rock music in the mid-80s. His lyrics, his melodies, what he stood for, it was everything the Great Mother needed to feel revitalized, to feel like the world was tolerable once more. It was now, in fact, her intentions to actually change the world instead of just tolerating it. Marius had tried everything to motivate Akasha to get up. He failed to do in millennia what Lestat manages to do within a year of waking himself. So strong was her desire to rise again and make Lestat her king that she actually fed on and killed her husband Enkill, although it was more a case of putting his power, blood, and energy he could provide her to better use, as by that time, Enkill's mind was too far gone to ever recover to the point of returning to his true and active vampire form. Akasha didn't even give Marius an explanation as to why she attacked him and buried him in ice. This all but confirmed Marius's doubts that her vision and her well-being would always be primal. It deeply hurt Marius to be treated in such a way after all he had done for her. He thought she would at least consider him as a counterpart in whatever she had plans to do. But no, the first sign of Marius even questioning anything, and he was just dispatched, as if he was nothing to her. It hurt him even more because he never pretended that Akasha was anything more than what she was, a monster. He genuinely embraced it. He says in Blood and Gold, "I understood that in her own way, Akasha was a monster. I was a monster as well. This did not stop me from adoring her in my heart and creating the most lavish shrine for her, and dreaming that, having spoken to me once with the mind gift, she would speak to me again." Marius had dealt with Enkil's jealousy when he first came into Akasha's existence, but the reality was, she never returned his feelings. She just didn't make him aware of it. His final realization was when he watched Lestat's encounter with the Queen, that he describes as follows: "I watched, transfixed, as he drew closer to the mother, and then in amazement, as he kissed her. I don't know whether it was his boldness or her stillness which so mesmerized me, but you can be certain I was ready to intervene if Enkil should try to hurt him. When Lestat drew back, when he told me that the mother had confided to him her name, I was caught off guard, and suddenly a wave of terrible jealousy took hold of me. I denied my love and my jealousy completely. I denied my crushing disappointment." Akasha chose Lestat for his defiance of these unwritten vampire rules. She chose him for his refusal to place himself beneath the most powerful vampire in the world. Lestat was a vampire of importance and substance. He was larger than life, and he knew. He embraced it, and he played on it. That, my friends, is why Akasha chose Lestat over Marius, and why she killed Enkil. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what type of video you want to see next, and I'd be happy to make it. Thanks again, and make sure to check out my video on the life of Marius by clicking the card here. Or if you want to start with Lestat's journey, you can start by clicking the Life of Lestat Part 1 right here. Thanks again, see you soon.